This is a special breakout episode of Between the Lines. It is World Rugby Hall of Fame week, brought to you by Tudor. And we have, well, a woman who has crossed codes, crossed winter and summer sports, and is the only Canadian woman ever to be inducted into the World Rugby Hall of Fame. Heather Moyse, how are you doing?
I'm doing great. How are you?
Very, very well. I'm excited by this because I've been on a deep dive around a lot of the work that you've done online. I went right down the rabbit hole, and I feel like, given you have done your own TED Talks, I can just put my feet up here for the next 20 odd minutes and let you just chat. How does that
Yeah,
sound?
that sounds fine. I've been doing a lot of talking today. It's been a busy day, but I'm a talker, so we'll be fine. We'll be fine.
I feel like this is going to work just fine. Let's get back to the beginning. Let's go all the way back. So 2016, you're inducted into the World Rugby Hall of Fame, but it all began for you on the park in 2006 with Canada, and the journey from there all the way through to 2013. Give us some insight into how you came to be in a pair of rugby boots in Canada.
Yeah, so I grew up in Prince Edward Island, the smallest province in Canada over on the East Coast. And I mean, it's accessible. It's an island, so it's accessible only by air or by a 13-kilometer bridge, which was actually a 45-kilometer, like 45-minute ferry ride when I was a kid. So you're kind of stuck on that island. But rugby was actually really big there. We didn't have a lot of football, like American football. So, I mean, any athlete who was playing any other sport, this was kind of the main sport in the spring. So when the snow started melting and, everyone was kind of tapering off of other sports like basketball and, volleyball and those sorts of things, everyone, men and like the guys and the girls, everyone kind of gravitated towards rugby. So if you were any kind of athlete at all, you were pretty much trying out for the rugby team. It was huge. It wasn't even until I left and went to university and onwards that I started getting questions like, "Oh, but you're a girl, you play rugby?" It never even occurred to me that it might not have been a sport for girls. Like my older sister played, and I was just kind of following in her footsteps.
So the early days of it, you were straight into it as a winger and fullback. Is that kind of how it stayed for you all the way through? Because this seems to follow this gradual progression into someone who is so ridiculously fast. So was that the way it was from the outset?
I was fast. I was fast right from the beginning. I played fullback all through high school and all through university. I only tapped into winger when they kind of played around with the back three a little bit with the national program. So we kind of swapped it, sometimes fullback, sometimes, winger and stuff like that. So most of the time it was fullback. I didn't know really what I was missing as fullback until I got to the national team. Kicking, for example, when you're as fast as I was, coaches didn't want me to kick the ball away. They're like, if you can just run, why aren't you just running from one end to the other? So it wasn't until I got to the national program when I realized like one of the main skills of a fullback is point kicking. And so that's probably why I gravitated a little more towards the winger as well.
And how long are we talking between when you first threw a pair of boots on through to 2006? What was that period like? And then when you reach that milestone, when you reach a World Cup, take me back to those memories of that opening game that you had in Canadian colours.
Yeah, so my high school would have been, oh my gosh, here we're digging here. 90, I graduated high school in 96. So 90, it would have been the fall of 94, 95, spring of 94, 95, 96. And then rugby, so that was high school. When I went to university, I actually played soccer for my first 2 years. I literally just went to the soccer tryouts because a girl on my floor needed a partner, like wanted someone she knew to try out with her. And rugby tryouts weren't for another couple of weeks. So I said, sure. And I ended up making the team, and I was felt a little bit stuck on that team for a little while until the summer between my second and third year university, when someone just said, "Heather, I hear you used to play rugby. We're short players for this tournament with our club team. Can you play?" And I was like, well, gosh, it's been 2.5 years. Like I haven't played at all, but okay, I'll play. And so as soon as I played, within minutes, I had my hands on a ball and was running like full field. And I just was like, oh my gosh, I realized how much I missed it. And so I called my soccer coach and I said, I'm sorry, as much as I love you and the team, I can't come back. And so I switched over and played rugby for my last 2 years of university. But then after that, that was the first summer when I graduated in 2000. That was the first summer that they had any kind of age, I guess, grouped playing for the national program. It's the first time they had a U23 team. And so I found out that summer I was playing just provincial for my province. We went to nationals, and someone approached our team, had a meeting, and said, we just want to make an announcement and a congratulations, Heather Moyse, you've been, named to the long list, the Canadian long list. And I said, everyone's clapping, and I'm like, what a long list for what? And they said, for the Canadian National Women's Rugby Program. And at that moment I was like, oh my God, we have a national women's rugby program? Like, I didn't even know we had a national women's team. So, I mean, at that point there was no lifting weights in any of the sports I did. I was just doing them for fun. I always thought weights would, turn it into a job. So I just played because I loved it, and I got long listed, and I went to this camp and made the U23 team. Moved to Halifax that summer, found a men's team to train with because there were no women's teams training that summer. And we had 2 games against the US at the end of the summer. So it was mostly just, well, I can't pass the ball to myself. So who can I? Anyway, I ended up having about 20 big brothers for the whole summer, which was awesome. And then after that, I just traveled and went about my way. I went and lived in Ireland for, half a year. I played club rugby in Ireland for a few months. And then I moved to Trinidad and Tobago to work down there. I did an internship down there and ended up living and working down there for almost 3 years. While I was down there, I didn't play much. I played in a sevens tournament, but I coached, and I ended up getting hired to develop the women's rugby program down there. So I kind of helped kickstart their national program. But I didn't really.
So this is all before, but this is all before you've represented Canada. You haven't played for Canada by this stage. This is all the prelude. Okay, so you're coaching, you're traveling the world playing rugby, but
yeah, I haven't done anything. So when I moved back to Canada in the spring of 2004. I had no intentions of playing. I'm just like, do I really want to throw my body around all the time, like throw it onto the ground all over again? And my sister is the one who convinced me to play with her in club. And part of it was I moved to Toronto because I was doing I was about to start my master's degree in Toronto. And she just convinced me of how fun it would be for she and I to play on the same team together again. So I was like, okay, well, I'll go to club. That club, the very first practice, the coach just happened to be the provincial coach. And he was like, okay, where the hell did you come from? I expect you. There's one tryout left for the provincial team. I expect you to be there. So my sister and I both went, and my sister and I, we both made the provincial team for Ontario. There was only one game that summer that we played against Quebec before nationals at the end of the summer. And there just happened to be a national coach at that game. And after that game, I kind of got a notice, you've been asked to go to a national development camp right after nationals. And I was like, okay, this is all right before my master's degree is about to start in the fall. And so I went to this camp at the very end of the summer, and my first tour with the team was the fall of 2004 in England. And so, I mean, just from me getting back into the game in the spring of 2004, I was back. I was representing Canada only months later. It was just crazy. So that brought me to the national team.
That is the right term, a storied venture into Canadian colours. That's incredible. So you've gone from Trinidad and Tobago back to Ontario, then into Canadian colours. That's 2004. 2006 is your debut World Cup. Give me your recollections around that. 7 tries to your name. I think you were equal top try scorer there. Take me back to 2006, because we also want to chart the rise of the women's game alongside your progression as well. So 2006, go.
Oh gosh. Oh my gosh. Well, it's crazy because 2006 was also like the year after my first time playing rugby for the national program in 2004, I was suddenly bobsledding again. Not again, I suddenly started bobsledding. And so part of that discussion was knowing that the Rugby World Cup was coming up in 2006, in the summer of 2006, with an Olympic Games potentially. And at the start, we had no idea if I was going or not, but that was potentially in February of 2006. I just had to talk with my coaches and say, look, this is a possibility. If I go, I'd be missing one of our winter training camps, like in February, the training camp that's leading kind of into the. So I don't know if they even expected me to go as far as I did in bobsledding or not, but they were kind of like, okay, if you go to the Olympics, I guess that's a good enough excuse for you to miss a training camp. So I said, okay, great. So it was literally just bobsledding that winter. As soon as the games were over in February, I think I took maybe 2 weeks off. Not even, when most bobsledders would be taking like 2 to 3 months off before training again. I think I took 2 weeks and then just started training and trying to convert that endurance of needing only 5 or 6 seconds at the start of a bobsleigh track to needing the endurance to withstand a whole rugby game. That was the hardest transition for me. And I started right away, and we had one training camp in the later in the spring, and then in the summer, the pre-camp kind of going into that. And it was amazing. Like, I didn't know what to expect. I mean, it was a whole year of firsts for me. And to be able to do that on home soil, like to be able to have competed in that, my very first Rugby World Cup in Edmonton, it was, I mean, it's so great. You know, it was just such an amazing feeling. But I do have to say that the same thing with my Olympic experiences, there's a lot that's just blurry. You know, when you're in that moment and you're just doing like what needs to be done and going and going and going and going, there are certain moments that stick out, but a lot of it is a blur.
Can you pull one moment from 2006 out to share with us?
Oh,
that World Cup.
I do remember picking off. I don't remember jersey numbers or specific people, but I do remember. I can say one probably offensive thing and one defensive thing that were both kind of great, I guess. One was like a mad run from one end, basically breaking a few tackles right along the left side, going down the left wing, and kind of deking people, outrunning people, running around people. And then their fullback, I mean, if she's any good at running angles at all, you're going to get caught up. You should be caught up by somebody. So anyway, just at the very last moment, she caught my legs as I was going down, but that offload up to my opposite winger on the far side, who had made the run all the way across, and I just popped it up. Probably, I think we were even inside the 5 meter line, and she just took that in and scored it. And it was kind of just a shift in moment. It was just so great, so often when I'm running, there's not a lot of support that's right there because I'm so fast, but to have that opposite winger be right, oh my gosh, timing was just great. Timing was perfect. And defensively, literally almost picking one of the English players, I think. She was running down the side, and just as she was kind of about to go over the try line, taking her jersey, probably not the greatest thing I should be talking about now, but taking their jersey and almost like pulling her out of that end zone and kind of swinging her gently, of course, out of bounds on the other side. But
gently placing her in the touch. Okay.
Gently placing her out of bounds. Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure. So that's 2006. They're your recollections there. I do, definitely. Actually, no, I really don't believe you because, no, I don't. I've watched some of your highlights. I definitely don't believe you. 2010, this is the year that absolutely blows me away. So you play in a Rugby World Cup, correct? 2010? And you also find a way to win an Olympic gold medal at home.
Yes.
I've got that right, don't I? I just have to I have to say it out loud because it just blows my mind. How on earth did you do that, Heather Moyse?
Well, it was kind of, again, under agreements with, and it was different rugby coaches. So they had to kind of be on board with knowing that I wasn't going to be, you know, doing being on tour, being able to do winter training camps with them. And also the summer before that, I stepped away from rugby because the summer before I had broken my shoulder. So I almost had to, I guess partway through, like a couple years before the Olympics, they had asked me to quit playing rugby. And I said, no, you guys recruited me. I was a rugby player. I'm a rugby player. I'm not giving this up. And so the sponsor who had made that request was like, well, we're investing a lot in your driver. And anyway, I said, well, you can either take me as I am, or I can push somebody else. And so they were okay with it. And then that whole season was fine. And then that spring, I broke my shoulder playing rugby. So they kind of pulled back a little bit, but I fought back and I rehabbed and I did all that stuff. But the summer before the Olympics, I didn't play any rugby. It was kind of agreed that I would take that at least, so I wasn't going to screw anything up for bobsledding and rugby the next year. So I focused that winter on bobsledding, competed in the Olympics again, and we won in Vancouver. And then again, it was almost taking no time off. Like I took those 2 weeks of kind of letting my body relax a little bit, and then right back into it because my endurance was like it's next to nothing. You know, when you're coming off a bobsled season, it's everything about like short, explosive speed for 5-6 seconds max. So anyway, so I turned my entire attention towards building my endurance, getting my hands back on the ball again, I just did hill sprints over and over and over, that whole transition. And then they had that spring camp, training camp that ended off with a couple of games against the US. And it was a hard camp for me, not just physically, but also mentally and emotionally. I know that there were some girls in the program who were kind of questioning whether or not I should be, people I hadn't played with before, right? People who had been there for the last couple of years while I was bobsledding, and are like, who is this person? And why is she suddenly allowed to come to the last tryout camp for this? And whereas some people I played with before were just super stoked I was back, you know? So it was this balance.
Can't you just walk around with a gold medal around your neck and just go, well, this is why I'm here? And you're lucky that I'm here. That's what I would have done, Heather. I would have just walked around just showing it to anyone. Any question, here it is. And it was at home as well.
Yeah, I'll lend it to you. That'll be good.
So you make it back for 2010, and then yes. That World Cup it's kind of a mixed one for you, because there was a little bit of there was an injury that you copped at the back end of that, which forced you back into rehab again. But the time between you as an Olympic athlete and rugby is so perfect as well, because you also played sevens. 2013, you're at the Sevens World Cup, which was in Russia from memory. I think it was Russia. Medaled there as well. I've got to say, I'm just a little bit disappointed that you weren't born a little later, because I think it would have been incredible to see you in 2016 at the Olympics in sevens as well. And that's where this tie-in is so seamless. Give me your take on the world of sevens before we get to that second Olympic gold medal. Sevens as an Olympic sport, and how much you would have loved to have had a crack in Rio.
Yeah, so sevens, I think it was, my whole take on sevens being in the Olympics was it should have been in there a long time before that. I think sevens rugby is the best spectator sport there is out there. It's also the best in terms of turnover, in terms of inclusivity in nations that are playing. I'm blown away that it wasn't introduced into the Olympics a lot sooner. I can't even mention any of it, like well beyond bobsledding. Like it should be in there over and above a lot of sports that are out there, to be honest. Anyway, I think it's absolutely amazing. And in terms of 2016, I had the option of still going and trying out for the team, but it meant centralizing and moving to Victoria. And after the Olympics, so 2013 the 2013 Rugby Sevens World Cup happened 7 months after I had hip surgery. And 2 months after that was the tryout for the national team going into the Olympics for Sochi. So I was exhausted. I was just tired. I was not wanting to move away and live, like priorities just shifted. If I could have still sort of been part of the program and still try out while staying closer to home and closer to family and friends after being on the road for almost 2 years straight, I think had I been given that opportunity to do that, then it would have been maybe a different choice. But I chose what I needed in my life then and what was important to me. And so I'm okay with that. But I can't say that watching was hard. Watching
It would have
was
been a nightmare for
exciting.
you watching.
Yeah, it was. And to be honest, I didn't actually watch very much. I couldn't. Like, I couldn't watch it because I'm like, oh my God, there's green space. What? Like, every time I'd see openings, there was something that didn't happen. Or, when you just, even now, I find it hard to watch some rugby games. Like, I just, I miss it. I really, really I miss the sport. I mean, it's beyond, it's more than a sport.
What do you miss most about it? Not playing.
Uh, well, it's more than a sport. You know that. Anybody watching
Mm.
this knows that it's a community, it's a culture, it's like, it's family. Even if they're complete strangers, it's a family. You could go anywhere in the world and find a rugby club and you'll be welcomed, and they'll help you find a job or they'll help you find a place to stay, and they take care of you. There's nothing like, I've played a lot of sports in my life, and there's no sport that compares to rugby and the inclusivity of rugby. Um, and yeah, and I miss running in open field, like not necessarily open field. Like, I could just go find a field and run, and that does nothing for me. But the
Open field with someone chasing you. That's the difference. You
yes,
just need someone out there to chase you
yes,
around, and likely they won't get close to you. But if you could have that, you'd go some way to replicating it. So 2013, you've touched that off. You get another medal. My God, your trophy cabinet must just be buckling under all the weight that it's got to carry. Then 2014, you add another Olympic gold medal. Again, like, can you touch on that? How you bounce back, and what similarities there might be in terms of the sport that you medaled in at the Olympics and rugby. Is there any crossover between the two?
there's definitely crossover. So I think the reason why I excelled in both of them was, well, a speed, but it's almost that, like, an explosive speed and power, which is not just pure strength and it's not just pure speed. It's I think obviously with rugby, when I started, I didn't start lifting weights until I was 27. So when I was playing rugby, all in the beginning and all through university, it was really pure speed, and I was fast enough to run around everyone instead of having to run through and break tackles, really. So when I started lifting weights because of bobsledding, and just because I'm like, oh, the Olympics are 5 months later, I'm going to just try and lift weights right now and see what I can do. It kind of just became a challenge. And so adding adding the weights to my program, I think just allowed me to be that more powerful on the rugby pitch, be able to break tackles a little bit better, or if I was wrapped up, be able to stay on my feet and hold it and, help drive that maul forward when I'm kind of stuck right in the middle of that cyclone. But I think that even just the running, the power of running, maybe is a little more intimidating than just like a little, running along, right? It's a harder tackle to make. And so the weightlifting that I learned how to do for bobsledding definitely translated over. I probably wouldn't have started lifting weights had I not. Well, I know I wouldn't have started lifting weights probably had I not done bobsledding. But that strength and that power, that training is the same, virtually the same. The only difference and struggle, especially for me as a pure sprinter, was always the endurance part. And people are like, oh, what do you mean? You must be super fit and you must, go for a run and stuff. And I'm like, are you? No, I don't actually. It is like a actual painful struggle for me. And it's not just kind of cardio wise, it's also physiological. Like, I could do a sprint and I don't know about now. I'll rephrase. I could do a sprint and then do a tackle and then stop and stand back up and sprint again, and then, and tackle someone else and then take a tackle, pick up the ball and run. And all of those are sprint intervals. Me being in shape just meant that the recovery time was way shorter. So it didn't mean if I was out of shape, I was any slower. It just meant that I would sprint and then I would have to, recover for an hour or two before doing one again. Whereas when I'm in shape, it was really pinpointed. So, I mean, at the very start of getting back into rugby after bobsledding, that's what it was. Like I would just sprint and, beat people, and then I would just be dying. Like it would be hard for me. And my calves would just be so tight that they would feel like they were going to explode. And I mean, I still get that. Even going for a jog, 2 minutes in, I need to like walk and stretch those out because they literally feel like they're going to tear through the fascia and explode on the street. But I'd say that's the biggest challenge. The similarities in terms of training for speed and training for strength are the same, but training for the endurance part that's not necessary in bobsledding, that's the biggest transition.
What's the equivalent adrenaline rush in rugby to going 150 Ks downhill in your sleigh? What's the crossover on that front?
Probably picking up a loose ball and knowing that you have that gap and then that field, and all you have is that measly little fullback who's going to try and, I say that lovingly since I was a fullback, but knowing that you just have that one person and that it's a game at that point. It's a draw. It's a figuring out drawing them in and then having the change of pace to outrun them, to get the angles right. Yeah, I would say that's it. I
think I feel like that would be a pretty similar hit. Now, 2016, you get named in the Tudor World Rugby Hall of Fame. Run me through that moment, becoming the first Canadian woman ever, and then you become one of only 3 Canadians alongside Gareth Reese, and the Blade, Al Sharon, to be given that honour. Take me back to it. What went through your mind when you were inducted?
Well, first of all, it was kind of like being told I was longlisted to the national team and not knowing we had a national team. When I received the letter saying I was being inducted,
you're not serious.
I didn't know that we had a World Rugby Hall of Fame. And so I was like, I was shocked. I was blown away. At that point, I was shockingly not inducted until just this past year. But with Gareth being in, I was stunned at the moment. And I think, continue to be shocked. And not because I don't think that that my game deserves to be in there, but partly just because I never tried to get in there. Because I just played, because I loved the sport so much. I think that's why. I mean, I don't know. It's a very surreal feeling to achieve something or to receive recognition for something that you weren't looking for, and 2, you would have done it. You were doing it anyway, regardless. And I think that's the part that makes it so surreal and that blows me away completely is simply that. It really is. And it was really overwhelming.
Amazing that you found yourself in Canadian colours without really trying or not looking for that. And you ended up there in 2004, and then 12 years on, you get named in the World Rugby Hall of Fame. It has been an incredible career across so many sports that you've managed to put to your name. What next for you, Heather Moyse?
What's next? Well, I'm speaking full time now, so I'm traveling all over the place speaking. Once the travel ban is back up. Right now, I'm not traveling anywhere. Self-isolating.
Yeah.
But also doing some private coaching, and because the kind of request for private coaching has come up, not physical coaching, just life coaching, business coaching, because of that stuff has kind of increased. Right now, just redesigning my website so that I can also create programs for people and group coaching stuff to help more people and reach more people. I wrote a book a couple of years ago. So things are kind of happening on that front, where I think that the benefit or the best part about achieving all of what I've achieved is simply that it's afforded me a platform from which I can now do what I feel like I was meant to do. And so it's really just elevating other people and I think making other people not sell themselves short, kind of owning their own stories and taking their lives where they want them, because we're so limiting with our own thinking that I think like I was. So I think we just need to think bigger and pursue bigger.
Well,
So
you've owned your own story so well all the way through, and we thank you for sharing that story with us on World Rugby's Hall of Fame week. We've also got George Gregan joining us throughout the week as well, another World Rugby Hall of Famer. So you're in excellent company. You deserve to be there, and thanks again for joining us.
thank you for having me. Thank you.